Animals stare at empty corners, bark at nothing. Sometimes they refuse to even enter certain rooms. Is it just, I don't know, a draft, a stray insect, or is it something far more profound?
Hmm.
New research suggests they might actually be seeing what we can't. Welcome to Cool, Weird, and Possible.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And one that, well, has probably crossed the mind of almost every pet owner at some point.
Definitely.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly what that something more could be. We'll look at everything from, ancient myths and anecdotes right up to cutting-edge science.
And maybe even peek into some wilder theories about the universe.
Exactly. We want to explore what seeing more really means for the creatures sharing our lives.
So when we say seeing more, we're talking about their incredible biological senses, obviously, but also,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that really intriguing, maybe speculative idea of perceiving parallel dimensions.
That's the mission. Let's unpack the material we have and try to understand just how extraordinary our companions might actually be. It's about seeing the world through their eyes
Mm.
and ears and noses, maybe more.
Okay, let's start with stuff we've all seen, right? Your dog just fixated on an empty spot on the wall, or your cat suddenly hissing at, well, nothing you can see. What is actually going on there?
Well, like you said, these aren't new observations. People have been noticing this for millennia. And across so many cultures, there's this recurring idea that animals can perceive things beyond our normal senses.
Yeah, like in ancient Egypt, right?
Oh,
Anubis, the jackal-headed god, he wasn't just some figure. They believed he actually guided souls.
precisely. And think about Cerberus in Greek mythology, the huge three-headed dog guarding the underworld. These stories, they hint at this deeper, almost spiritual role for dogs, maybe being tuned into transitions between worlds, perhaps.
It gives you chills a bit.
It does. And you find similar ideas in religious texts, too, like the story of Balaam's donkey in the Bible.
Oh, right, the donkey saw the angel before Balaam did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the famous commentator Rashi even suggested that God gives animals this greater perception specifically to protect humans from, well, seeing things that might drive us mad.
Wow, okay, so our sanity is kind of protected by our own limited senses? That's
Yeah.
unsettling.
It's a powerful thought. And it's not just ancient history either. In some African traditional religions, animals are often seen as messengers, maybe from ancestors.
Like how?
Well, travelers might watch baboons, for instance, seeing their behavior as signs of safety or danger ahead, or certain snakes near a home, especially unusual ones like a double-headed snake, could be seen as carrying messages, warnings about broken taboos, or even news like pregnancy, sometimes delivered in dreams.
So a very direct link to the unseen world through animals.
It suggests this universal human feeling, really, that animals are connected to their environment in ways that seem mystical to us, almost psychic.
And it's not just myths and traditions. So many people have personal stories, right?
Right.
Things that make you really question what's going on, like pets reacting when someone passes away.
Oh, definitely. I've heard stories like that, too. Someone told me their son's dog, usually really noisy, just sat quietly comforting them after their mother passed. Didn't bark for, like, 10 days.
That's uncanny. Or the story about the cat that just stopped eating for a whole week after its human died, even while the rest of the family was there.
It's hard to explain that away easily.
Whee!
And then there are stories about animals sensing health issues.
Yeah, like the cats that suddenly started sleeping on their owner's sister's bed just a week before she collapsed, and then apparently meowed like crazy when the paramedics arrived.
Whether it's grief or some subtle physiological change they're picking up on, it shows this incredible sensitivity. It really makes you wonder.
It feels like they're acting as some kind of early warning system, doesn't it?
In a way, yeah.
Like those cats reacting wildly to a gas leak before the person smelled it strongly, turned out there was a cracked gas line.
That's a classic example of heightened senses providing protection.
Or dogs just staring intently at a wall, maybe growling at something unseen. It makes owners wonder, is it a ghost?
And that taps right into pop culture, doesn't it?
Totally. Think of the animals in Stranger Things sensing the upside down, or in The Sixth Sense reacting to spirits, or even Ghostbusters.
Those stories work because they echo things we observe, or think we observe, in our own pets.
Yeah.
It makes you pause and think, what are they picking up on that we're missing?
Okay, so let's pivot to the science, because these stories are compelling, absolutely, but science offers some really incredible explanations for how animals might see more. Explanations based on sensory abilities that are just wildly different from ours.
Right. And what's key here is that seeing more doesn't automatically mean seeing into another dimension. It often means having a much, much more detailed perception of this dimension.
Okay, like vision.
Exactly. Take vision. A dog's night vision is about 5 times better than ours. So that spooky shadow in the corner your dog is reacting to, for them, it might be a perfectly clear, though subtle, movement or reflection you just can't make out.
5 times better.
Wow. And it gets weirder. Many lizards, lots of birds, they have ultraviolet vision, UV vision.
Meaning they see colors we can't even imagine.
Pretty much. They see wavelengths of light completely invisible to us. Studies have shown they have the eye structures for it, special cells, UV transmitting bits in their eyes. And tests show they can tell things apart based on UV cues. Imagine seeing patterns on flowers or trails left by other animals that are just blank to us.
That alone sounds like a different dimension of reality almost.
It really is a fundamentally different visual world. And it's not just the raw input. Neurologically, when an animal focuses, their brain activity changes. Things like gamma waves get boosted.
So their brain is literally amplifying the signal.
Yeah, it's like they're extracting more information from subtle things. Their attention mechanisms enhance perception in a way ours might not. It makes their focus much more intense, potentially revealing details we'd overlook.
So they're actively tuning into stuff we filter out, like built-in zoom lenses and extra color filters. And it's not just sight, right? Hearing, too.
Oh, absolutely. Hearing is another huge one. Dogs, for example, hear much higher frequencies than we do, way beyond our range.
So when they bark at nothing.
They might be hearing a high-pitched squeak from an appliance, or a mouse in the wall, or a siren miles away that's totally silent to us.
Right. Okay.
And then you have elephants using infrasound. These are super low-frequency sounds, way below our hearing threshold.
Like a subwoofer channel.
Kind of.
Mm.
They can communicate over miles using these low rumbles, possibly sending messages through the ground itself. It's like their own private network.
A private network covering kilometers, carrying info totally silently to us. Wow. Could they be warning each other about storms or dangers long before we notice?
That's exactly the kind of thing researchers think they use it for. It's a whole layer of communication we're completely oblivious to.
Mind-bending. And what about smell? We know dogs are good, but...
Good is an understatement. A dog's sense of smell is phenomenal. And for a cat, their world is arguably built primarily around scent. It's their main way of understanding everything.
So that cat reacting to the gas leak, it wasn't seeing a ghost, it was smelling danger, loud and clear.
Almost certainly. They pick up on mercaptan, the chemical added to gas, at concentrations far, far lower than we could. To them, it's an overwhelming, unfamiliar, and likely alarming smell. Their world is painted in smells we can't even conceptualize.
It's like a biological alarm system.
Definitely. And then there are senses we just don't have at all, like magnetoreception.
Sensing magnetic fields, like birds navigating.
Exactly. Birds, fish, amphibians, foxes, even platypuses have it. Studies on foxes are amazing. They seem to have much better hunting success when they pounce aligned with the Earth's magnetic field, particularly northeast.
They're using it to aim, like a biological targeting system.
It seems like it, almost like a built-in compass guiding their actions.
That's incredible. If they can sense that, what else about our world are we just completely unaware of because we lack the sensors?
It's a really humbling question, and some animals take it even further with electroreception sensing electrical fields.
Like sharks.
Sharks, electric eels, platypuses again. They use it to find hidden prey or navigate. Even tiny creatures like bumblebees can detect the weak electric fields around flowers.
So their world is literally buzzing with electricity in a way ours isn't.
In terms of perception, yes. It's another layer of information completely invisible to us.
Okay, these heightened senses must explain why animals sometimes seem to, predict things like earthquakes or bad weather, right?
That's the prevailing scientific view, yes. It's less prediction, more early detection.
How so?
Their strange behavior before a storm or earthquake is likely them reacting to subtle environmental shifts we miss. Maybe tiny changes in air pressure or ground vibrations or shifts in electromagnetic fields. They might feel the faint P waves from an earthquake seconds or minutes before the main shaking hits.
The P waves. Those are the faster, less destructive waves.
That's right. So they're reacting to real physical precursors, not using psychic powers. Scientists are cautious about saying animals predict disasters, but they definitely respond to early warning signs we overlook.
That makes a lot more sense than clairvoyance.
And this incredible awareness isn't just about reflexes. It ties into deeper questions about animal consciousness.
Right, the big question of whether they experience the world subjectively, like we do.
Exactly. The hard problem of consciousness is still a huge challenge. But we do have evidence of things like self-recognition. Many apes, elephants, dolphins pass the mirror test.
They recognize themselves in a mirror.
Yes. And remarkably, so do some birds, like magpies, which is fascinating because their brain structure is very different from mammals. They don't have a neocortex in the same way.
So self-awareness might not require the brain structure we thought it did. That's huge.
It really challenges our assumptions. And then you have animals like African gray parrots, Alex, for example, or Nkisi.
Alex the parrot, yeah, famous for his cognitive abilities.
Absolutely. Nkisi reportedly had a vocabulary over 950 words and could use them in context, even asking questions. Their cognitive skills are often compared to dolphins, chimps, or even young human children.
Okay, so if an animal can recognize itself, feel complex emotions, learn language, their subjective experience, their dimension of perception must be incredibly rich. It makes those reactions to unseen things seem, well, less like simple instinct and more potentially meaningful.
It absolutely deepens the mystery and expands our view of what's possible in an animal mind. Their perception is often way beyond ours.
All right, so we've established animals have these amazing, sometimes truly bizarre senses that let them perceive our world in ways we can't imagine. But let's circle back to the really provocative title, Your Pet Can See Parallel Dimensions. Could these incredible senses actually bridge into perceiving actual other realities? Let's get into the seriously weird and possible.
Okay, this is where we step firmly into speculative territory, where science fiction often bumps up against theoretical physics.
Yeah.
Because the idea of parallel universes or the multiverse,
Yeah.
it's not just sci-fi anymore. There are actual scientific theories, very controversial ones, mind you, that entertain the possibility.
This is the stuff our sci-fi fans will love. What kind of theories?
Well, there are a few main ideas. One comes from cosmology called eternal inflation. The idea is that the rapid expansion after the Big Bang might not have stopped everywhere at the same time, potentially spawning other bubble universes with maybe different physical laws.
Wow, separate universes popping off?
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Another idea stems from the possibility that space is truly infinite. If it goes on forever, then eventually, just by sheer probability, particles would have to arrange themselves in every possible way, including identical copies of our solar system, our galaxy.
So infinite copies of us out there.
Yeah.
That's a lot to handle.
It is. There's also a newer, pretty wild idea about a sort of mirror universe existing on the other side of the Big Bang, potentially running backward in time.
Whoa.
And even just the fine-tuning of our own universe, the fact that the physical constants seem so perfectly set up for life, leads some scientists to wonder if ours is just one universe among many, maybe the one where the numbers happen to come out right.
Okay, mind officially blown. So could animals somehow tap into this? This idea of quantum vision sometimes pops up. Is there anything to animals using quantum mechanics to see other realities?
Ah, yeah, that's a common trope, but it often comes from misunderstandings of quantum physics.
Yeah.
Ideas like, consciousness collapses the wave function, or that observing something instantly changes it across the universe.
Uh-huh.
These aren't really how physicists understand it.
So no spooky action at a distance triggered by my cat staring at the wall.
Not that direct way, no.
Yeah.
Quantum effects are generally confined to the very, very small scale. Measurement in quantum mechanics is more about information gain, changing our description of a system, not about consciousness creating reality. There's currently no scientific basis for animals having some kind of quantum perception of parallel universes.
Okay, so the physics doesn't quite line up with the pop culture dream of quantum seeing pets. But the idea of parallel realities is everywhere now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like the Upside Down in Stranger Things, all the alternate timelines in Star Trek, the Marvel and DC multiverses into the Spider-Verse. These concepts are deeply embedded in our imagination. It really feeds that inner conspiracist wondering, what if?
It really does. And it lets us ask an interesting question. Could these persistent anecdotes, my dog senses ghosts, my cat sees another dimension, could they be a kind of folk interpretation? Maybe it's us trying to make sense of their incredibly heightened sensory input within our universe, using the language of these multiverse theories we're now familiar with.
So maybe their reality is a different dimension of perception just layered onto our shared physical space.
Yeah.
Because their experience of it is so fundamentally different.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. Their internal world, shaped by senses we lack, could be considered a different dimension of experience, even if not a physically separate universe.
Okay, so let's try to nail down the core questions we started with. First, do animals have natural interdimensional vision?
Based on current science. No, not in the sense of seeing physically separate parallel universes.
No.
But Their perception of our dimension is so much richer, so enhanced with senses we don't have, seeing UV light, hearing ultrasound, smelling trace chemicals, sensing magnetic fields, that it feels interdimensional from our limited perspective. They live in a much fuller version of this reality.
Right, it seems like another dimension to us. Second question. Could pet behavior predict paranormal events?
Again, probably not in a psychic way, but can their behavior alert us to things we'd otherwise miss, things we might interpret as paranormal? Absolutely. They're reacting to subtle, real-world environmental cues. Those infrasounds, tiny vibrations, electromagnetic fluctuations, smells long before we can detect them. They're picking up physical precursors, not reading the future supernaturally.
So they react early, we notice late, and sometimes fill in the gaps with ghosts.
That's likely a big part of it, yes.
And finally, are animals protecting us from threats we can't perceive?
On this one, the answer is a pretty clear yes. Whether it's detecting a gas leak through smell, alerting to an oncoming seizure through subtle chemical changes they sense, or even just reacting to emotional distress we might be trying to hide, their heightened senses absolutely serve as biological early warning systems. They protect us from dangers, both physical and maybe even emotional, that we are often completely unaware of.
They really are our furry, feathery, scaly little guardians in that sense.
They really are.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought to ponder, doesn't it? If our pets perceive so much more of this reality, this single dimension we think we inhabit, just through their different sensory filters, what other wonders, what other dangers might be lying just beyond the reach of our limited senses right now? What else are we missing, hiding in plain sight?
It definitely invites a sense of humility about our own perception and curiosity about the true richness of the world around us.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the absolutely extraordinary world our pets perceive. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. It's an amazing topic.
Be sure to subscribe to Cool, Weird, Impossible wherever you get your deep dives. You don't want to miss our next adventure into the known, the unknown, and everything in between.